Hi, Husky Pups and parents. The teachers and I were talking in kindergarten, and we wanted to do a quick little how-to video to show you how to do guided journal writing in our classroom. Some of these things are little pointers for you, but I just want to show you what we usually do in our classrooms so that you can guide your children at home on this. You can do it two ways. One way is you could use the paper that we have included in your packet, and you can let the children draw the pictures, and then they can write sentences. Now, if you do this, they're going to need to put at least 5 details in their drawing, in their illustration, using at least 3 or more colors, and by now they should be beginning to write at least 3 sentences. Now, when they do the sentences, you need to make sure they start with a capital letter at the beginning of the sentence and use correct finger spacing, and then use punctuation marks at the end of each sentence. All right, parents, you can do this in 2 different ways. You can actually have the children illustrate and write, or they can write and illustrate, whatever they feel more comfortable in doing. Some teachers do it with the writing and then illustrating, others do it the other way. So either way, it does not matter as long as we have these kids writing. Or you can find a picture from a magazine or from a book and then let them write about something that they are familiar with. And we chose a picture of a fish. Now, we know in our Starfall lessons that nouns are things or words that tell about people, places, or things. We've also talked about adjectives. Adjectives would be our sparkle words, if you will. And we also know about verbs. They are, for in kindergarten, are words that show action, like go, run, jump, hop, those kinds of words. Okay, so we're going to start with the noun, and we know that this is a picture of a fish. Now we're going to move along to the adjectives, and the adjectives are going to be what describes about this fish. We know that he is yellow. That's one of our color words. One of our sight words too. This picture is small, so he's probably a very small fish. If you wanted to talk more about small, what are some other words that mean small? You could say tiny, or little, and the verb or the action words that we know of that describes this fish would be that a fish can swim, a fish can splash, and a fish probably could play in the water too. But parents, if you'll try to at least get maybe 2 or maybe 3 of each one of these. So we know that the noun is the fish. We know the adjectives are yellow, small, tiny, or little. And the verb or the action words, they can swim, that a fish can splash, and a fish can play. Now, it's time for us to put our sentence together and actually make a sentence, and that's where we're going to be talking through this, and then we're going to write about the sentence. So we know that it's going to be about the fish. That is going to be the topic, the fish. So if they're drawing their own picture over here, they're going to draw a picture of a fish. So the first sentence could be the fish and you could use one of the adjectives. You can say is yellow, or is small, or is tiny, or is little, or you could use one of the verbs, the fish, and we have swim, splash, and play. But what are one of the sight words that we have that would make sense? The fish swim. Does that make sense? No. So we need to use one of our sight words over here that would let that make sense. We could say the fish can swim, and you should already know how to spell can. Notice that I've made sure that I put finger spaces in between each of these words. Now, I've got a capital letter. I have finger spacing, and mine I've got 3 or 4 fingers because our chart is so big, but by now your children should use at least 1 or maybe 2 finger spacings between each word, and we end it with punctuation. Now, which punctuation would make sense? Would it be the question mark? Is this a question sentence? No, it's a telling sentence, so you know we cannot use the question mark because that doesn't make sense. So the only 2 that are left would be the period. Let's see if that makes sense. The fish can swim. That does make sense. Or if you want to get really fancy and show excitement in your sentence, you could say the fish can swim. And you would use a what? Exclamation mark. Okay? Now for our second sentence, we're going to be adding some adjectives to this next sentence. We know that this is the fish, so you're going to continue with this. The fish. Oh, got the adjective. Let's use our adjectives. Let's see, we could use yellow, small, tiny, or little. Let's use tiny. So we're going to copy the word tiny. The tiny fish and we're going to use one of those sight words again, and let's use splash. Now I've run out of room here, so I've got to go down to the next row. Now we're not going to use capital S for splash because we're still continuing this sentence. Although it's starting at the beginning of a new line, it's still the same old sentence. So we're going to use a lowercase s, P, L, A, S, H, ending it with a period or an exclamation mark. But I think I'm going to use a period for this. Okay. So let's read our sentences together. We have one more to do, but let's read what we have. The fish can swim. The tiny fish can splash. Now, let's use one of these other words that we have used that we have learned with our sight word list that would take the place of the tiny fish. Well, first of all, we need to figure out, is this fish a boy fish or a girl fish? And we'll say he's a boy fish. So what word means the same thing as a boy tiny fish? If you said he, that is correct. So we're going to use he, and that's on your sight word list, so you probably already know how to spell that. He is the same thing as the tiny fish. He, and then we can say can. And let's look at another one of the last verb that we have. We've used swim, we've used splash, we can say play. And that's also one of my sight words. And at the end of the sentence, we need to make sure we have a period or an exclamation mark. And I'm going to use an exclamation mark here. So let's review our 3 sentences and see if it makes sense, if it has to do with the fish, and if it used our adjectives and our verbs. Are you ready? Let's read together. Start up here at the top. Read with me, boys and girls. The fish can swim. Read it again. The fish can swim. And that's an exclamation mark. The tiny fish can splash. The tiny fish can splash. And our last sentence, he can play. Read it with me. He can play. And if you want to get real fancy, you could write this at the end. The end, or the end. And that's how we do our journal writing or our guided writing lessons.